Now we come to the fifth and final segment on Yom Kippur of the writings of Gershon Chenoch of Radzin in his book Sod Yesharim. I'm your host, Betzalel Edwards. The problem is that the world still contains separate evil. Now the idea of separate evil is very uncomfortable to me, because it doesn't sound Jewish. I mean, everything comes from God. The difference between Judaism and other religions, namely, well, let's face it, Christianity, is that based on Gnosticism, really, is that there's this separate, independent force of evil, a devil. God is only goodness, and anything evil is not God. Now, in Judaism, we say that, based on the prophets in Isaiah, who said God forms light and creates evil. In other words, everything is created by God. Everything comes from God. That the devil is also working for God, so to speak. That it's not, of course, the point of the Satan is to trip man up. So if man is tripped up, it's the only reason why God would hire Satan to trip man up, and really that Satan's working for God also, is in order for man to be tested and use his free will to reject evil and to choose good. So that's a Jewish idea. But people could have, let's call it the illusion of separate evil. So the problem that the world still contains an illusion of separate evil. Malchus, sovereignty, kingship, contains the place of constant connection to God, but also walls of concealment. In other words, inside in Malchut, there's a constant connection to God, but there's walls of concealment. And if there's any evil in the world, that's called concealment, something separating us from God. That's why, cleaning out those lungs. That's why Malchut contains all of the constrictions, tzimtzumim in Hebrew, limitations, constraints. This is why God said, go and make yourself smaller. This is as it is said in the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakunya went to visit his son-in-law, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So the great hero of the Zohar is Shimon bar Yochai. His son is Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar married a woman whose father was Shimon ben Lakunya. So Rabbi Shimon ben Lakunya, the father-in-law, went to meet his great son-in-law. And when he went to meet them, first his daughter came out, the bride came out and took his hands and kissed her father's hands. And so he said to her, go and make yourself smaller before your husband, for he is holy. So he was being clever, quoting the Midrash about the moon. So he's like, my daughter, you're like the moon. Go and make yourself small. So it's a very witty, erudite Talmudic joke. So in other words, don't kiss my hands, kiss his. Your husband is so great. So Rebbe Lazar heard this and said, now I remember a teaching about the moon that is as precious as a pearl. God said to the moon, go and make yourself smaller. For the moon thought she was given control. In other words, in our world, as long as the refinements, the birurim, a very important Hebrew word, refinements, the service of God needed to separate good from evil, as long as these refinements, these birurim, are not complete, then God's malchus, sovereignty, must be limited and constrained. An example of these constraints would be adhering to the code of Jewish law. This is because there is still complete evil in the world. And again, evil is anything that conceals us from God, which is even further distance from the divine source than Malchus. So something separating us from God is further away than Malchus. We said Malchus was like the farthest away of God you can be, where God is completely concealed. That's not true. There's something further. There's a wall of concealment. The force of concealment that says God is not there. That gives that illusion. So the complete evil also has a strong claim against God, saying, after all, God created me, so he must have a purpose for me, for pure evil. Therefore, we have to be very careful with Malchut and guard her from evil with all kinds of restrictions, limitations, and constrictions, tzimtzumim. So, in other words, because there's only a fine line between Malchut and pure evil, like you mean the concealments in Malchut and the concealments that are evil, we have to guard Malchut very carefully from that place of evil. So, Birur means all this refinements is that after all of the cosmic and metacosmic distance separating Malchus from God and His source, she, Malchus, still has the power to limit herself, and by means of the limitations to return and stand face to face with the illumination of God without any walls of separation. Then the force of pure evil won't have any ability whatsoever to be there and this and do anything to take away this illumination of being face to face with God. Therefore, evil will remain in the darkness, and Malchut will be shining in the light. This is why Yom Kippur is called B'kol Et, at all times. Do not go into the sanctuary at all times. That's, at all times, is the Day of Atonement. Why? Because every aspect of creation is complete on Yom Kippur. That is why we have the limitations of Malchus. We don't eat on Yom Kippur. We don't drink. We don't wash. We don't have intimate relations with our spouse. We don't wear leather shoes. That's the limitations. And all these limitations mean that creation is really complete. This is why the verse says, don't go at all times into the sanctuary, except with this. And what is this? The tchelet, the garment of pure sky blue that the high priest would wear, the special bull offering, all of these things. The tchelet represents the color of the throne of heaven, which inspires the fear of God, limitations. And the bull represents gevurot, the pardinim, the power of constraint and holding back. This means to not go into the Holy of Holies with awesome confidence of tkifut, of being that I'm the one completing creation. No, you don't go with tkifut into the Holy of Holies. We go with limitation into the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, in order to separate Malchut, with concealments of Malchut, from total concealment, which is pure evil. And in order to turn Malchut out of the concealment and bring it back to God, we need constriction, limitation. So we go with this, like the Bible says, we go with this, meaning the fear and awe of God, all of the tzimtzum, all of the constrictions that enable us to connect with God. Gamar Tov, have a successful fast, be well, and have a good, sweet new year.